So welcome everyone to our Friday origin stories of the river and lakes regions around the world here in the connection field. And I'm here with Malini Rajendran, and we bring to you every Friday at 1:30 Eastern this opportunity to really imbibe and embody the water, the rivers around you, and where the understanding more deeply the watershed in which you live in. And many of us might know a river close to us, but we don't really know about the river or its ancient story. And so we started this 52 weeks to invite you in to discovering through this week with Malini, river in India, and understanding it as a whole living system. And what's been happening is that people are getting really inspired to learn more about their river. And what tends to happen is you start to fall in love with the place that you live in. So today we are going to hand this over to Malini to take us into an origin story here. And so stay tuned, and we invite you to bring yours, to be inspired to bring your information, your river, in new ways in which Malini will share at the end. So welcome to the connection field, and here we go.
Thank you, Shelley, and welcome everybody to the connection water field and to the origin stories of our rivers. This is episode 6, and we will be looking at the origin story of the only 2 rivers that flow from the east to the west in peninsular India. This is the story of the river Narmada. And these are 2 rivers, the Narmada and the Tapi, which flow from the east into the Arabian Sea. As always, rivers are celestial beings and respected and honored as deities. According to the Vedas, it is believed that the merit you accrue by taking a dip in the Ganga is the same as having just a view, a darshan, a look at the river Narmada. And the merit gained by looking at the Narmada is same as just as even remembering and thinking about the river Tapi. These peninsular rivers, the Narmada and the Tapi, flow west and are believed to be much older than the Himalayan rivers that we saw from episode 1 to 5. From the earliest of times, they have held deep religious and social significance. And here is an image of goddess Narmada, Narmada Devi, who is the deity of the river. This is the river that is the major part of, flows in the major part of Madhya Pradesh. It's the 5th largest river in the Indian subcontinent. It is the largest amongst the west flowing rivers. You can see the rivers are here. The Narmada flows and the Tapi flows from east to west. They are the only 2 rivers that flow out into the west. And the annual inflow of Narmada is much more when compared to the total flow of all the 5 rivers of the north of the Punjab. Narmada, actually the name comes from Narma, means gentleness, and it is also described as the most sacred among holy rivers in some scriptures. It also means the giver of pleasure. It is believed that merely by seeing the Narmada, a man is freed from all his sins and becomes pure. Now, the second river, Tapi, flows from the eastern Satpura range in southern Madhya Pradesh, according to Hindu mythology. It is believed that this river was created by the sun god when he was unable to bear the heat of his own body. Tapa means heat. And people say that by just saying the words, Jai Tapti Maiya, that is, Hail, O Mother, Great Mother, the Tapti River, you attain all the spiritual benefits of thinking about the river. Both rivers actually emerge from the confluence point of these two great mountain ranges, the Vindhyas in the north and of the Narmada, and the Satpuras of the south, and between the two rivers. So starting at this point in the high mountain ranges, where both the mountains actually intersect, mountain ranges intersect, this river emerges. It must also be understood that this part of the continent comes from the old Gondwana region, which is the oldest part of geological formations of this continental amalgamation that was called the Gondwana. Also, this mountain range, the Satpuras, shows the end of the plains of the Indo-Gangetic plain, the Vindhyas, and the beginning of the Deccan Plateau, which is much, much older in terms of geological history than the Himalayas. The river Narmada starts from the mountain range, as shown earlier, in what is called Amarkantak. Amarkantak means the perennial throat of Lord Shiva, and in the Amarkantak hill. This is the pond from which the Narmada begins to flow, and it is, a temple has been built around there, and this is a perennial pond. From this source pond, the river continues to flow down and grow in stature. The legend is, there are many stories about the Narmada, obviously stories that emerge in different timelines and time periods, but according to the most ancient and renowned story, it is believed that when Shiva was sitting on the mountain range and he was meditating, he was in such deep and intense meditation that sweat started flowing from him. And this sweat got collected in this tank that you see here. And from this tank, it started flowing in the form of the river Narmada. Because as he was sweating, he was being cooled too, and which is why the river is called that which is gentle. There is a saying that amongst the locals that all the pebble stones of the Narmada actually turn into Shivlingas. So the current of the river produces an oval-shaped polished stone as shown here, which is called a lingam. And this is basically a cryptocrystalline quartz called the Shivlingas that are considered sacred and are sought after for daily worship. The unique markings that you see on these stones are thought to be auspicious by those who worship Lord Shiva. Another legend is that the river Ganga actually assumes the form of a black cow and comes to the Narmada to bathe and cleanse itself in her holy waters. In the 15th century, the famous and popular Indian mystic poet who was a weaver, Kabir, is said to have meditated in a place which is called Kabir Chabutra, also called the platform of Kabir. This platform is situated in the town of Amarkantak. So it is over the years of history that the religious places of this river have continued to bear great witness to great mystics and sages that have emerged. From Amarkantak, this river flows through all the mountains, and finally, over her last hilly terrain, she comes to what is called the Dhuandar Falls and enters a deep ravine that you can see here, known as the Marble Rocks in Jabalpur region. Dhuandar means smoke. The falls, because of the speed of the water and the depth of the gorge, there is a constant mist that emerges from this fall and which looks like smoke. And that is why this fall is called the Smoke Falls. This reminds me of the Mississippi Falls in Africa, where because of the height of the water that it falls, there is this constant mist that rises. So there is a similarity across the world in naming falls, depending on how the water emerges as a spray or in the form of fog. And this river then flows through this amazing region called Marble Rocks. This is one of the most exquisite parts of the river. And in fact, I have been fortunate enough to take a boat ride down this segment of the river, and it is really amazing. They are soft marble rocks which are carved and by the flow of the river, and it's really beautiful. Then this river flows past the island town of Omkareshwar. This is one of the major islands that was created in the middle of the river, when it is believed that in years back, the the Lord of the Vindhyachal range, came here to meditate. And as he was meditating, a sandbank of clay was formed around him. And because the sandbank of clay was in the shape of Om, this place is called Omkareshwar. There are many other legends of Omkareshwar that have emerged over a period of time in human history, but this is the most ancient and prevalent one of this region. And you can see that this is, because it's an island temple town, it's a huge big island temple town in the middle of the river. There is a walkway bridge that connects the mainland to the temple of Omkareshwar. You can see this long walkway bridge. And it is a tradition amongst native people and people of the local region that when they walk on a bridge over a river, they usually take their footwear off. So they walk barefoot over the river because it is seen as a sign of disrespect to wear your footwear and cross a river bridge that is over a sacred river. This is the place, this is also, Omkareshwar is also the place where the great saint Adi Shankaracharya met his guru in a cave in the 8th century AD or Common Era. Then this river flows to the ancient town of Maheshwar, which is famous for its palaces and temples. And these palaces and temples are some of the most exquisite forms of architecture and sculpture you can find in this part of the world. Extremely intricate figurines and extremely intricate relief sculpture and carvings are found here. This is where the Holkar dynasty built enormous ghats and temples along the river. Any place where religious austerities or religious ceremonies are performed on a river is called a ghat. And you will find ghats built along rivers by rulers and ancient and people in history over a period of time. And these have survived century after century, and they still continue to be used for the purpose of performing religious ceremony at the river and to bathe in the river and honor the rivers. The river can also be, this is a beautiful view of the river as it flows in Maheshwar, as it is seen from the tops of one of the temples. The interesting thing is when a river flows and towns are built on its banks, they are also the cradles of creating art and culture, and various skills and talents emerge. And this is so true of the towns that have emerged on the banks of the Narmada. When Queen Ahalya Bai Holkar started a tradition, you know, she built the fort that you saw, forts and the temples that you saw on the previous slides. She started a tradition of designing and weaving a very unique form of fabric, which is known as the famous Maheshwari saris. So rivers are not, towns that come up on rivers are also repositories of culture, art, craft, and so much more richness of what is humanity. The cultural framework of treating these rivers as sacred has also been established by an unusual tradition, which is called Parikrama, which is basically the circumambulation of the river. Now, the Narmada has been known, the Narmada Parikrama has for centuries been a very traditional way in which people once in their lifetime honor this river. It is a long trek of 2,600 kilometers. It is a spiritual journey. It is something like what the indigenous cultures and all parts of the world do, which is called the river walk or walking the river. This spiritual journey takes 3 years, 3 months, and 13 days. And the pilgrims do not cross the river at any point. They start from the shore, the ocean shore town of Bharuch, and they keep moving up till they come to the origin point of the river in the mountains of Amarkantak, where, of course, where it origins, there is no question of crossing the river. They go around the Amarkantak temple that you saw at the pond, and then they return on the return journey, and thereby they complete what is called the Parikrama. And you know, the Narmada Parikrama, as it is called, is considered that those who do it, and still villagers and native traditional people who are in the state of Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, particularly Madhya Pradesh, and some communities in Gujarat, still undertake once in the lifetime, the whole family or an elder in the family undertakes this pilgrimage. And one of the five, it is also considered one of the five pilgrimage that a person is blessed to complete in their lifetime. In Indian ethos, when you do a pilgrimage, it is not done by your right or your wishes. You have to be blessed and its spirit and ordained to be able to carry out that pilgrimage. So anybody who embarks on a pilgrimage of any sort needs to know that it is a blessing that is bestowed on them, that they are able to undertake that pilgrimage. And these people carry their food and cook simple meals on the banks of the river after they have bathed and after they have prayed. Pilgrims still walk the distance. You can see here they are walking the distance with carrying whatever they need to carry for the journey on their head. And they complete the distance through tough terrain by train and by bus. But now in modern time, and since a lot of people have taken a shine to doing this pilgrimage, there are now tour operators who actually conduct these what is called the Parikrama tours in between 7 days and 14 days. Here is one image of a Parikrama tour that is done from April 4th to April 10th. And most of it is done not walking as these people do, but most of it is done by bus or by train. And the thing is that the traditional parikrama sites where the pilgrims would stop, offer prayers and do ceremony are still followed and carried out even by the tour operators. All rivers, the greater and mightier the river, the more humanity wants to dam it. And this river has been the source of continuing controversy and agitation and people's movements against it being dammed. And like the crocodile, you know, you can actually see here, there is an old warning saying that this is a crocodile ecological zone and crocodiles are in the water, so don't step in. But in 1980, since the construction of the dams, the crocodiles have also been found to have been diminished and moved away. And in fact, the dam has also covered small and extensive stretches of the pathway that the pilgrims would cover by foot. They have now been submerged under the reservoirs of the Narmada Valley project. So most of the pilgrims are not able to now, in this day and age, because of the dam, complete their pilgrimage of parikrama, that is circumambulation of the river by foot. And the most colossal of these structures, there are numerous dams that have been built on the river Narmada, but the most colossal of these structures is the Sardar Sarovar Dam, and it is one of the largest dams in the world. And the tragedy is its reservoir has flooded and displaced over 1 million native people who are called Adivasis. Adi is the first tribes of the land are called Adivasis, or they are the original inhabitants of the region. And they are mostly poor and indigenous tribal people whose entire culture and livelihood is at stake, because their culture and livelihood is linked closely to the land and on which they live, which is now submerged underwater because of the reservoir. And it is also sad that the futures of a generation and the futures of a river depends on its unrestricted flow and its ability to carry rich nutrients to the farmlands and to sustain marine biodiversity. In the westernmost part of the river, there are communities along the river banks whose only survival and livelihood is the freshwater fish that is harvested from the rivers. And because of the damming of the rivers, the biodiversity of the river has changed, and the flow of water to sustain this biodiversity downstream has greatly reduced. And now you can see here, this entire image is of the river bed, which was once flowing with water, which is now totally dry. And the other dangerous thing that is happening when you dam a river, especially when you dam it so close to its reaching it into the sea, is that saline ingress and increasing underground salinity of the aquifers is happening. And this state, these borderline cities and communities and territories and states are now being grossly affected by brackish and saline water coming from underground wells and even on the surface now from where fresh water used to flow. And this is only because the damming has affected the hydrodynamics of the water cycle, both underground and overground. So let us honor and save and protect our rivers from destruction and pollution. Let us not convert our perennial rivers, which are fast becoming seasonal rivers because of the pollution, the deforestation, the silting, and the damming of their waters. So with that, I thank you for being part of the story of the river Narmada and Tapi, the only two rivers that flow from the east into the western seas in the peninsular part of India. Thank you. And I invite all of you to please come and bring the stories of your rivers and lakes in the regions where you are. Through the power of storytelling, let us reconnect and live in harmony and honor with our water bodies and the rivers that are so essential to life on this earth.